doesn't take much to bring some difference. You give some change, which makes a change. Because nothing gets mileage like a charity. Just a little change turns into a chain. And before we know it, the results are massive. So give a little to make a big difference. For donations, call now. UKIM 0207 387 2157.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf, with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident Specialists. Start your successful claim today.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices. Or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
जब बात हो हलाल मीट की तो कैसे मुमकिन जिक्र न हो हाजी बाबा का। हाजी बाबा अज़दा में आपके लिए। हम अज़दा में अरसा 10 साल से जायद मुल्क भर में 45 से जायद काउंटर्स के साथ बेहतरीन पैकेजेस, हर वैरायटी का मीट और आला मायार के लिए आइए हमारे पास। चिकन ब्रेस्ट, चिकन क्यूब या कीमा सिर्फ 3.99 पाउंड पर केजी। लैम या शीप लेग, लैम शोल्डर और मिक्स सिर्फ 6.99 पाउंड पर केजी। बेबी चिकन सिर्फ 1.99 पाउंड पर केजी। आपकी सहूलत के लिए वक्त की बचत और मायार की जमानत, तमाम हलाल गोश्त और अशिया जरूरत एक ही छत के नीचे। हाजी बाबा हलाल मीट, फाइंड अस इन अज़दा।
Salam Radio presents General Election Hustings, Thursday the 5th of December, 8 to 10 p.m. at the Allama Iqbal Centre, 157 Cromwell Road, PE1 2EL. Doors open 7:30 p.m. for a prompt 8 p.m. start. All are welcome. Please arrive early to avoid disappointment, as entry will be forbidden when capacity reached. Broadcast live on Salam Radio 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk. Watch live on Salam Radio Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. General Election Hustings, presented by Salam Radio, Thursday the 5th of December, 8 to 10 p.m. at the Allama Iqbal Centre, Peterborough.
Feel like some great tasting chicken tonight? Great meal deals, wraps, burgers and sides. We've got it all at Chicken Palace. Call and collect at 302 Lincoln Road on 01733 702 447 or 8 Park Road on 01733 343750. Chicken Palace, open 11 a.m. till late.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. That whoever abandons my sunnah is not from me.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Good morning, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Globally Local.
Globally Local on 106.2 FM. Your city, your world, and your chance to make a difference.
Yes, welcome to our debut show. I'm Joe Hosted, and as an introduction to our theme of the week, sustainable development, we will, over the course of the show, be discussing the subject, global citizenship. Joining me in the studio today is a fellow advocate for sustainable development, founder of Earth Matters, all-round good guy, and my friend, Richard Ferris. Welcome, Richard, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi there, Joe.
So, I think we should begin with a quick introduction into the concept of sustainability. As to a lot of people, including until recently myself, that word means absolutely nothing. So Richard, what does sustainability mean to you?
It's one of those things that can be incredibly complex, so let's make it really simple. It's really about living within our means. Now, what does that actually mean when you unpack it? All of us has a bank account, or most of us have a bank account, and we understand that if we walk up to that hole in the wall and we attempt to draw out £50, that's fine, as long as we've got £50 to draw out. If we keep on drawing money out without putting anything back, we end up in a situation where eventually we'll get a letter from the bank and our account will be closed down. Well, it's the same living on planet Earth, okay? So everything that we use, that we take, we have to do it in a way that is sustainable, meaning that it will survive in the longer term. So it's all about putting things back, living in balance, living within our means.
Yes, absolutely. A friend of mine recently described sustainability to me as when he was at university, would go out with his friends and would go out drinking 5 nights a week until the early hours, and then have to be at university the next day for 8 a.m. and then do a full day and do the same thing again. He was saying that to him is exactly the same, similar to how you've just described it.
Yeah,
you can only sustain that lifestyle for so long. At some point, you have to make changes to your lifestyle, otherwise it won't survive.
Well, I mean, you take it this time of year, there's a huge number of bugs and things going around, and everybody in the centre here has had it. We've all had a man flu or whatever, and I'm fighting through it here and now. And often it's because we live unsustainable lifestyles, because we're rushing around, we're working so hard, we make ourselves vulnerable to things. We don't look after our bodies well enough, we don't eat healthily, we don't get enough sleep. And so, that is an unsustainable lifestyle, and we end up paying the price for it. But in the wider scheme of things, if we don't approach looking after the place we live, and I don't just mean our street, our city, I mean the whole world, because after all we're here to talk about global issues as well. Sooner or later it comes back to bite us, and it's slowly starting to do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, I guess.
Absolutely. And actually, sustainability and a sustainable lifestyle is better for us in the long run. It's not I mean, it is for future generations. It's one of the most important things, but actually it creates a better lifestyle for us now, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, we live in a world where people are highly motivated by money. Okay, let's be honest, all of us, we all want a basic level of economic well-being. But we can't have continuing growth all the time at the cost of the planet that supports us.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that's really the underlying issue around sustainable development. How do we carry on improving the quality of life for people in the world? Because let's be honest, it's a very unequal world, and everybody deserves to have at least a basic level of well-being in terms of their health, access to food, without actually having a negative impact on the planet. Because my daughter, her generation, are going to inherit a huge number of problems because of the way in which people have lived over the last 40, 50 years. With a disregard for what's around them.
Yes, and this is, as you've just mentioned, sustainable development.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is what I want to move on to next, because sustainability is one thing, it's a huge concept, but sustainable development is moving forward, isn't it, in a sustainable way. So I do actually have a quote here from the Brundtland Report that defines sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's sometimes difficult for people to think about the world in 100 years' time when you've got more pressing needs. If you're growing up in a country or in a community where people are struggling to feed their families, where disease is rife, etc., you're probably thinking about those immediate problems rather than the wider global issues, and rather than thinking, well, in 50 years' time, sea level rise could have done this, or global warming will result in that. It's hard for people to get their head around that, but I think we're going to have to start doing that. We're going to have to start thinking about how our actions today in our daily lives, even at a very local level, are going to have an impact and a price to pay later on.
Absolutely, yes. And there are organisations thinking ahead, aren't there? There are lots of people doing that, exactly that, thinking ahead, trying to make sustainable changes, trying to encourage people to make sustainable choices now.
Yes, and I'd hate people to think that this was all about going back to the Middle Ages or something, that we have to give up all the things that we now value so much. I mean, great advances in public health are to be welcomed, but obviously that means we're all living longer, and that means the population is growing, so we're putting even greater strain on the planet. So we've got to be clever about this. It's not about going without necessarily. It's about making more informed choices. So very simply, let's say you go into a shop and you've got the option of buying oranges that have come from Morocco or oranges that have come from South Africa. And in one case, the oranges have been brought here by air freight. In another case, they've been brought here perhaps by boat. You have to weigh up then which of those is the best choice for you. And it might not be a simple, in the future, I choose this one because it's cheaper than that one. Because the true cost of a product isn't just what you see on the label, on the barcode. If things have had to be flown here out of season, then that has an impact on the planet, and so perhaps we have to start taking that into account.
Yes, and it's that interesting thing of it's a balance, isn't it? It's a well and good saying, and I'm one of the people that truly believe that a vegan diet is great for the planet, but there is that point that if everybody went vegan overnight, what would happen? But it's a balance of making sustainable choices, cutting back certain things. You see, we're not saying don't live life to the full, and but it's being responsible for your actions. And
I know we could end up talking about food quite a lot here, but you mentioned a vegan diet. It's not necessarily true that everybody has to give up meat and give up dairy products overnight. But in the past, meat was more expensive than it is now, and so people used to buy meat for special occasions. Meat has dropped in price so dramatically that people are able to choose a meat-based diet 7 days a week. Now, not only is that not particularly good for their health, it's also not good for the health of the planet, because you have to ask yourself, why is meat so cheap now? It's because it's being mass-produced. A lot of people in the community here like chicken. It features quite highly in their diet. But if you think about how that mass-produced chicken is being produced in huge units where there's a huge amount of pollution in terms of air pollution, the animals don't have a fantastic quality of life, and these are sentient beings after all. And the land that's being used, the ground that's being used for animal production, could be used for producing plant material for consumption. And actually it's not as effective, it's not as efficient, because once you start feeding animals to produce your food, a lot of that food, plant-based food that goes to the animals in the first place, isn't all converted into meat. A lot of it is lost. Let's be blunt about it. A lot of it is lost in gases that they give out. And there's waste in the system, and so it can take as much as 10 times the amount of you can produce 10 times the amount of plant matter from the same area of land as you can in producing meat matter. Cows and chicken and so forth. So there are some difficult issues to tackle there, but we're not asking people to give things up. It's just make a bit more informed choices.
So there's two things there for me. First of all, it's we're not saying don't eat chicken. We're saying maybe just eat less and better quality chicken. That's a sustainable balance, isn't it?
It is, yes. And actually, it is a win-win, because if people start making choices to eat animal products that are better produced with better animal welfare standards, the chances are it's better quality meat. Less fat and less use of antibiotics and other chemicals, which we know is building up in the food chain and ends up getting into our body tissues as well. So it's making a healthy choice for the planet and for you as a person.
And you touched on something else there, that the mass production of meat now, that for me is a real big one. It's why I went vegetarian.
Yes.
Because it's, you know, these slaughterhouses and just the animal production, the scale of it is not sustainable. We used to live in small villages, and you know, you'd have your local butcher and whatnot, but that's not the case anymore. Now we're trying to provide for these large corporations, for the supermarkets, and you know, like you say, they're trying to bring the price down.
Yeah, and I mean, there are refrigerated trucks driving up and down the country all the time, delivering meat to markets far, far away from where the animals were actually being grown and where they were slaughtered.
Yeah.
And we've got a situation now where we're importing meat from abroad, from countries where the animal welfare standards are not as high, and it is a fear if and when we leave the European Union, who've got very strict controls on animal welfare, that we'll be exposing ourselves to even more of this cheap meat, particularly from the Americas. And anybody that saw the BBC programme last week, which looked at the massive expansion of meat production in Brazil will understand the connection, because they're felling the Amazon rainforest to turn it into cattle ranch to produce cheap meat for Western markets. And many of that cheap meat ends up in things like burgers and so forth. You know.
So what we're talking about here is globalization. A global scale of mass production of meat just to satisfy some of our individual convenience and lifestyles, just so that we can have meat more often. But that's something I want to come back to later on, because that links into how our actions, how everyday actions have a result and an impact on the rest of the world. But now I'd like to introduce the topic of global citizenship. What is global citizen? Why become a citizen of the world? How does this relate to sustainable development? And I'd like to play a short clip of a talk from a gentleman called Hugh Evans, who is the founder of globalcitizen.org, which we'll get into. But I just want to play you his definition of what a global citizen is.
A global citizen is someone who self-identifies first and foremost not as a member of a state, a tribe, or a nation, but as a member of the human race, and someone who's prepared to, and someone who's prepared to act on that belief to tackle our world's greatest challenges.
So that was Hugh Evans, founder of globalcitizen.org. Globalcitizen.org is an organisation, Richard, I introduced you to a little while ago, who they encourage you to take action, and they inform people on global issues. So on their platform, their online platform, you can tweet, you can sign petitions, you can send emails, and actually as a result of that you can earn rewards, which you can then spend on competition entries and tickets to live events and things like that, which I think is a great concept. What do you think, Richard?
I mean, anything that encourages people to take action and believe that their contribution is valid is to be applauded. I mean, sometimes the problems of the world can seem so huge that we feel powerless to change them. But actually what this is doing is saying that actually if you step up and along with thousands, millions of other citizens and take action, you can influence the thinking of politicians and decision makers to change things for the better.
Yeah. So also I've got here, according to Oxfam, some qualities of what makes a global citizen. So the first one is aware of the wider world and has a sense of her or his own role as a world citizen. Respects and values diversity, has an understanding of how the world works economically, politically, socially, culturally, technologically and environmentally, and participates in and contributes to the community at a range of levels from local to global. So that being said, would you consider yourself a global citizen, Richard?
I'm an aspiring global citizen. I'd hate to. I couldn't sit here and claim to do all those things. I mean, that's a fantastic human being if they're doing all those things already and in touch with all those issues.
Yeah.
But I totally concur with what they're saying there, because it is incumbent on all of us to recognise that we live in a very interconnected global world.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us have mobile phones, and mine's going off in my pocket at the moment. I apologise for that.
Okay.
But it's amazing that actually 5 million people have mobile devices in the world. That's 62.9% of the global population.
Wow.
So we're very, very interconnected in that sense, and it's something that we all cherish, that the ability to be able to ring somebody or speak to somebody on Skype the other side of the world. But it also brings great responsibility, and I think, the danger is in this modern world that there are some political movements and leaders who want us to be isolated. They want us to put up walls between us, either metaphorical or actual real walls. Think of Trump and his wall across the border with Mexico.
Yeah.
Just at a time when we need to be coming together and tackling some of these global issues in a collaborative way. So things that we do here are echoed by people living in India, in Pakistan, in Australia, in Brazil. Because let's face it, human beings all have the same aspirations. They want to be happy, healthy, and they want a happy, healthy, prosperous future for their children. Mm-hmm. We're all the same, ultimately. That's why I feel compelled to aspire to be an effective global citizen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. But what would you say are some ways some simple changes that people can make to their lives to make them more of a global citizen? Not necessarily on a global scale, but a global citizen at home.
Okay, I think it's about being open-minded and respectful of other people's cultures, the way they choose to dress, the way they choose to practice their faith, the way they choose to eat. And actually, rather than think of ourselves as all distinct from one another, celebrate the things we have in common and open our minds to learn about people, learn about the way people live and their values. As I say, I suspect that in most cases, if you start digging, you find that everybody's values are essentially the same.
Yeah.
So I think to become a global citizen, you need to be, a creative person. You need to be flexible, open-minded. There's a certain amount of dedication involved, and you need to be proactive. Reach out to people. Mm-hmm. Simple acts in your daily life. For example, working here at the Iqbal Centre on Cromwell Road, as I walk into work every day, I pass people of multiple different nationalities. Most of them, I don't know them. They're strangers to me. But having done that walk every day, certain people, I recognise their faces. So I've begun saying hello to people. And it's amazing what response you get. Okay, you get a few people look at you as if you're a bit weird. Like, why has that person said hello? They've never met me before. Yeah. But gradually, people look up from, in my case, reading a book, or they look up from their phones, and they might reply to you and say good morning. Little things like that, building bridges between communities.
Yes, absolutely. I think open-mindedness there is one thing you mentioned, and I think that's key actually to a global citizen, because you have to be able to accept and appreciate another culture or another religion in order to live in harmony with them, which brings us on nicely to cultural integration, which is something I want to talk about, because I think cultural integration is key to successful global citizenship. I saw a video recently online. It was an international football game. I don't know if it was American or European football team playing a team from the Middle East, ladies football team, and the one of the female footballers' hijab had slid off during the match, and the opposition team came over to her and they crowded around her while she fixed it and got herself back into a position to play. And then they, kind of patted each other on the back and played on. And that was such a wonderful moment for me to see.
Yes.
Such a true example of global citizenship. They just completely respected the situation. They acted. They knew what to do.
Yes.
do you see anything like that? Can you think of maybe a time where you've seen cultural integration? Working here, you must...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I saw that actually, that the incident you mentioned on social media, and then there was an incident the week before last where filmed on a London tube train where a Jewish gentleman and his child were being racially abused by a guy reading a book on the tube. And the interesting thing was, a lot of people did the usual thing that people do in those situations. They looked frightened. They looked at the floor. They weren't sure what to do. And it took a Muslim woman on that same tube train to step forward and step in and say to this gentleman, look, back off. What you're doing is unacceptable. And I find it quite sad that a big deal is made of that, and people say, wow, did you see that? That should be normal, everyday behaviour, where we all share the same values and we respect people's right to practice their faith or be of a different culture. It shouldn't be unusual that people step forward and do this in this way. But that was a lovely example. I mean, here at the centre, we run a number of activities. We've had, for example, we've had a women's sewing class where we've had people of all nationalities coming together, and they've shared their experiences of making garments and shared their skills. We've had a woman in her late 70s teaching a class of mainly Pakistani heritage, but also some African heritage women how to sew. They absolutely love one another. The sense of community in that group is fantastic. And going back to one of our pet subjects, which is food, every time we have an event here that involves food, you've never seen so many different cultures coming together and people trying food from different cultures and enjoying it and then sharing recipes. So all those sorts of things, it may seem trivial, but these are all things that open minds and help us to appreciate our differences, but at the same time recognising that we've got far more in common.
Yeah. I've always thought that the culture in this city is so diverse, and I actually heard on the radio a little while ago someone from Millfield saying, if you can't afford to go on holiday, come to Millfield, because there's so much going on here, and but not just limited to Millfield, also in the entire city. We've got people from all over the world living here.
Yes.
And it's nice to hear children coming home from school and being able to say words in different languages because they've made friends with someone at this school. And yes, I just think it's wonderful.
Well, you mentioned Millfield specifically there. If you walk Lincoln Road in the space of less than, say, half to 3/4 of a mile, I think at one stage I'd counted you could eat food from 14 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that's a result of immigration, isn't it? And people moving around the world.
Yes, yeah. I mean, like I said at the start, we live in a highly interconnected global world where people do have these freedoms to move around, and we have the opportunity to benefit from the different skills and the different cultural norms that people bring.
Yeah.
And it diversifies and opens our lives up to great opportunity, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to play a quick clip now from a campaign between HSBC and Global Citizen TV, which I believe is actually a statement about not only the UK's connection to the European Union, but indeed the rest of the world. It has strong ties with cultural integration, and for me it was a real global citizen moment seeing this poster. I was on a train in London, and I was going from one place to the other, and it just kind of stopped at the tube station, and I looked up and I saw it, and I thought, this is cultural integration. This is what I believe to be English culture.
We start the day with a Colombian, a Guatemalan, or a piping hot Costa Rican.
And a Danish to go. We drive German, Japanese, German, and we ride Taiwanese.
We watch American movies on Korean tablets and struggle with Swedish flat packs.
Our heroes hail from Chile, Argentina, Brazil,
and often Belgium.
We eat Chinese,
Italian, Indian.
Okay, we're going to go to a quick ad break now. Stay tuned and we'll finish the clip after this.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Where can you get high quality and low prices? Amar Food Store and Halal Meat in Lincoln Road, Triangle is the place to go. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. Also send money to Pakistan absolutely free. We have all top brands at special offers, offer free customer parking and provide a free local delivery service. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call us on 01733 687 374. High in quality, low in prices.
Al Murad Tiles. With over 70 stores nationwide, we are now open in Peterborough. Up to 50% discount offers now on. Largest selection of tiles. Full bathroom suites from only £189. Paint, LED lighting, laminate flooring from only £7.99. Over 1,000 designs of wallpaper in stock. We have everything you need. Come and visit us at 193 Fengate, Peterborough, PE1 5BH, or call us on 01733 34 58 47. Al Murad Tiles, now open.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf, with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident specialists. Start your successful claim today.
There's a million choices available for dining out in Leeds.
But if you want something special, there's only one name to remember.
Mumtaz Leeds.
Relax in our newly refurbished Riverside restaurant.
Enjoy exquisite home cooking from our brand new menu. Upgrade to the Mumtaz Leeds experience.
And the price? Well, we're better value than ever before.
Mumtaz Leeds, Chadwick Street, Leeds, LS10 1PJ. Call 0113 242 4211.
Free car parking available.
अगर मूड हो मुस्तनद और मायारी देसी खाने का तो आजमाएं लिंकन रोड पर देसी रेस्टोरेंट। दिन का आगाज देसी नाश्ते के साथ हलवा पूरी, चने, निहारी, पाए, पराठा और आमलेट। हर रोज सुबह 7 बजे से दिन 1 बजे तक। एक मजेदार और स्वादिष्ट लंच के लिए कबाब, सैंडविच, तंदूरी डिशेस, बल्ती डिशेस, बिरयानी और बहुत कुछ। दिन 1 बजे से शाम 5 बजे तक हमारी खास डिशेस, देसी तवा या हमारी ताज़ा हांडी, 1 kg बेबी चिकन, लैम्प का गोश्त हड्डी के साथ। ऑर्डर पर तैयार कराएं। ईट इनसाइड, टेक अवे के लिए फ्री डिलीवरी। पूरा मेन्यू देखने के लिए और ऑनलाइन ऑर्डर करने के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे जाएं desirestaurant.co.uk। 60 नशिस्तों की गुंजाइश के साथ और एक प्राइवेट फंक्शन रूम, कैटरिंग सर्विस भी दस्तयाब। डोंट फॉरगेट देसी रेस्टोरेंट, 298 लिंकन रोड, पीटरब्रो, PE1 2ND। कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर 555795।
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Welcome back to the show, Globally Local. I'm Joe Hosted, and joining me this week is Richard Ferris from Earth Matters. We're discussing global citizenship. We're just going to play the clip that I played before the ad break once more, just to bring anybody that's just tuned in into what we're talking about, global citizenship, how our actions affect people around the world and indeed our planet. This is a clip of an advert between HSBC and Global Citizen TV, which promotes the culture and the world that we live in.
We start the day with a Colombian, a Guatemalan, or a piping hot Costa Rican.
And a Danish to go. We drive German, German, Japanese, German, and we ride Taiwanese.
We watch American movies on Korean tablets and struggle with Swedish flat packs.
Our heroes hail from Chile, Argentina, Brazil,
and often Belgium.
We eat Chinese, Italian, Indian, and go Dutch. Some of our best friends are Mexican, Siberian, Hungarian,
and French.
Hey.
We live on a wonderful little lump of land in the middle of the sea. But we are not an island. We are part of something far, far bigger.
So it's interesting, don't you think, Richard, that we do live in a diverse world and we might not know it, but it is the coffee we drink, the food we eat, the people we speak to every day. Everything that we do in this country has a connection to diversity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's brought home to me working here at the Iqbal Centre. You know, we see the different nationalities of the volunteers that come to work here. I mean, only last week I was at an event where when I stopped to think about the number of people who've been involved in our gardening project here, we had people from Sweden, we had people from Albania, we had people from Syria, we had people from Pakistan, we had people who were English, we had people from Hong Kong, all coming together with a common goal to establish a garden together.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we talk about what is British, Britain is an absolute melting pot of all the nationalities I've just mentioned, and many more. Some of those you heard in that advert, and you know, we have benefited from successive waves of immigration, and through hundreds and hundreds of years, it's made the place what it is. And you know, the Millfield Gladstone area is a little microcosm, really, of wider Britain. And the values that we hold. I mean, I loved listening to that clip because you mentioned in there we've all struggled with Swedish flat packs. Well, I struggled with a Swedish flat pack this weekend. It only took 30 minutes for me to actually shout something and throw the hammer down in anger because I couldn't get it to do what it wanted to do. But you know, every step of the way, every day, we are interacting with products and goods and services that have come from different parts of the world, with things that have been created by people of different nationalities, of different cultures. So we are, whether we like it or not, we live in a truly multicultural, interconnected world. And I just think that's something to be celebrated, and that's the purpose of this chat, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So that in mind, let's go back a few steps. Earlier in the show we mentioned that we were going to talk about how our actions here, our everyday actions, as we've just said, everything we do within a day has a connection to diversity, and we've mentioned some of the positive things there.
Yeah.
You know, the positive things that come from relationships with people of different faiths, different cultures, but there are quite a few negative things, aren't there?
There are. I mean, we were talking about what makes a global citizen, and we were talking about values, truth and trust. And I said very clearly, I believe all people are equal in their humanity. One of the other key things we need to do is have respect and care for the world, not just the world in terms of immediately around where we live, but the wider world. And we need to understand that an action that we take here can have ripples that are felt elsewhere around the world. Now, let's take a simple example that I think many people will be familiar with. You look at the profusion of plastic in our lives, and plastic drinks bottles in particular, which really drives me crazy, because a lot of these single-use plastic bottles contain, water, something that comes out of a tap, something that you can fill up a refillable bottle every day, and yet people are still wedded to the idea of buying a plastic bottle on the go because it's easy and it's convenient. Every corner shop has them. Where do they end up? Well, if you're lucky, they end up, responsible people put them in bins, and they may go for recycling, but around 45% of them get recycled. The rest, they're thrown down somewhere. They lie there for a while. They find their ways into waterways, into rivers, and those rivers flow naturally to the sea. Those plastic bottles find their way out into the sea, and ocean currents carry them. And you know what? They end up somewhere far away from us, out of sight, out of mind maybe, but they end up in things like the huge Pacific garbage patch, which is a gigantic area of plastic that's all been corralled together by ocean currents and creating huge amounts of ecological damage. That is, that plastic gets ingested, eaten by marine organisms, it finds its way up the food chain into fish, etc. People eat fish, it ends up coming back to us. So these things are all cyclical.
Yeah.
Plastic bottles thrown away here can end up on the shoreline of a country far, far away. Plastic bottles take somewhere between 400-700 years to break down in the natural environment.
And even then they don't degrade, do they? They just get smaller and smaller into microplastics.
Yeah, they get broken down into tiny, tiny little fragments of plastic that we won't even be able to see with the naked eye. And believe me, that's when it gets really frightening, because then they get into human tissues and we're walking around with bits of plastic inside us. That's not a good idea, I'd suggest.
No, and that's the problem, is that it's never going away.
No.
Ever. The plastics, it doesn't... If you eat a banana and you throw the banana skin on the floor, over quite a short amount of time, it degrades back into the ground and back into soil.
Yes.
But with plastic, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you can't see it. And at one point, we won't really even be able to pick it up with our technology, will we?
No, that's right. And then another example, which you see on the streets in any city in this country, and I think Peterborough is probably no worse than other places. We see fridge freezers, we see microwaves, we see televisions, just dumped on the street.
Yeah.
And even if the stuff is picked up, where do you think all those electrical things end up? They either end up in landfill here, or, and this is what's really scandalous, much of this stuff is then waste which gets exported to developing world countries. Much of it ends up in countries in Africa, where people who are so poor, way beyond our understanding, are so poor that they are willing to spend all day for the equivalent of a few pence dismantling electrical goods to take different components out of them, which are then sold on.
At their own risk, the health risks, aren't there, involved in that?
Absolutely, because actually a lack of understanding means that in some cases those big electrical dumps, they actually burn a lot of the material to get rid of it, the stuff they don't want, and then that releases poisonous fumes, which are then ingested by local populations, adding to their own health problems. So, we've got to think about this. We cannot carry on just living the sort of life where we think when something's come to the end of its life, our television's broken, we just chuck it away. We've got to start thinking far more responsibly about how we reuse things, keep them alive, upcycle them.
Yeah.
And as I say, a decision to throw something out today, whether it means on the street or in a bin, has repercussions elsewhere. We can't keep on living this way.
Yeah. And there are, it's responsibly throwing things away, isn't it? Because there was a campaign not too long ago, earlier in the year, I think, around the drains, some of the drains in Peterborough, the yellow fish. Did you see that? It says that the ocean starts here.
Yes.
And it just, when you see a sweet packet floating down the road, the wind blowing it along, the likelihood is that it's going to go down that drain and then it's going to end up in the ocean. So we're actually, two ways we're contributing to that ocean plastic pollution. We're throwing our litter on the floor, or it's escaping from bins and then working its way through the drains, or we're just shipping it outright, just putting it on a boat, shipping it over to another country and asking them to deal with it.
Yeah, and either way, I would suggest that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, the other side of this same coin is if we carry on this lifestyle where we think buying new is the thing to do, and we're constantly buying stuff, you have to put into that decision to buy stuff how it's been produced. And every time we're buying stuff that has been manufactured new, obviously energy is needed to make things, and that energy comes from the burning, at the moment, predominantly of fossil fuels. That's, oil and coal.
Yeah.
With the impact that's having on the planet of warming the planet, and people go, oh my goodness, why does this matter to me? And I've heard people say it's actually quite nice if it gets warmer. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people who come to this centre commented when we had the heat wave in the summer, oh, it's lovely and warm, despite the fact that people around the world are actually going to suffer horribly as a result of global warming. So again, we need to think about these things, and it particularly impacts on some of the most stressed communities, the poorest communities in the world, where water is in scarce supply already, where crops are starting to fail, and so on and so forth. And we can get into that if you want to a little bit later.
Yeah, and this all goes back to, as we were saying at the start, making sensible choices, responsible choices, being aware of what implications your actions might have on the planet and on other people around the world. Is there somewhere, Richard, you think, where we can find that information?
On how to live more responsibly?
Yeah, on how to find where our everyday actions, what implications they might have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a big subject, and if you go online, there are many websites where you can get information on lifestyles and so on. I would suggest people break it down, and if they're particularly concerned about plastic and then a particular element of plastic, they might be concerned about water bottles, have a look at something called Refill. There's a campaign to encourage people to do away with single-use plastic and move to using refillable water bottles. So if you look up refill.org on the internet, that'll give you some great ideas about how you can get water on the go without using plastic bottles. You could look at any of the United Nations websites. You could look at non-governmental organisations such as Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth. There's lots of advice out there. It can be a bit of a minefield to find your way through it. And I'll tell you what, if you're an adult, one good way of getting to grips with these issues is talk to your kids, because many children are really switched on with these subjects. They get it at school. They understand the need to recycle. They understand the need to look after the planet. And they're at schools which are really multicultural, where kids around them have come from different parts of the world with different experiences. So I think there's great hope, actually, that many of the young children are going to be the really great global citizens of the future. So parents, speak to your kids. They've got great ideas for doing the right thing for the planet.
Yeah, it's funny, just talking about that, it seems absurd that there's people living in other parts of the world that don't have access to any clean water at all. And yet here we are trying to encourage people to use the water from their taps.
Yes. I mean, I've never understood why people would go out and pay £1, £2 for a bottle of water. You know, it's a freely available resource in this country.
Well, they say, don't they, that when you buy the companies producing bottled water are just producing plastic.
Yes.
The water already exists. That's their main function, is to create plastic.
Yeah.
And the extent at which they're doing that is quite frightening. I went to a talk recently for one of the sustainability leads for Coca-Cola. And he ended with their target was to have 50% of the bottles they made from at least 50% recycled plastic, something like that. And I just thought that's not good enough.
No.
By 2050, sorry. So that's, if we've got any hope of meeting the 2030 agenda, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in danger of sleepwalking into the end game here, because people keep saying, oh, we'll do it by 2050, we'll do it by the end of the current century. No, I think we need to be making some of these changes in a matter of years, not decades. And again, as I say, the kids, they get it. They'll tell you, and you only have to look at the impact that 15-year-old Swedish schoolgirl Greta Thunberg has had with her. Yeah, she's a hero of mine as well, or heroine rather. And she'll be broadcasting soon on BBC Radio 4's Today programme. She's taking over one day coming up soon.
Oh, fantastic.
But you look at the impact that young woman has had, and she's engaged young kids all around the world to take action with their global climate strikes every Friday, and they've happened here in Peterborough, and it's been really encouraging to see that.
Okay.
And to see that those kids understand the bigger picture. And I think that's what we're talking about here. I mean, I mentioned earlier about the number of people who have mobile phones and how interconnected we are in terms of our communication. But interconnection is about more than just communication. It's all life on Earth is interconnected, and so we need to start understanding our place in all of that. maybe I'm a little bit odd in this respect, but I spend a lot of time thinking about the significance of me, the individual, in this planet with billions of human beings and even more billions of other plants and animals. And it's quite humbling. It makes you realise how small each one of us actually is.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember I was lucky enough to go to university. One of my university lecturers saying, each of us is but a small cog in a very, very big machine.
That's very well put.
Yeah, you can let that, you can allow that to diminish you as a person. You think, oh my goodness, I'm nothing. Well, in fact, in some ways you are nothing, and it is quite humbling. But we are each important, and how we behave and how we interact with others, humans and non-human, and the finite planet around us has far-reaching repercussions.
Yeah. Just going back to what you've just mentioned about us all being interconnected and mobile phones, there are some people now saying that having a mobile phone has become a human right. I'll just give you a bit of background.
Yeah.
In terms of, you need to be able to connect with the rest of the world to make progress these days. Like, for example, when I decided to set up the People Project, with my colleague David, we had access to the internet, we had access to a website, and I was sat on a phone on a train, editing the website and creating content all on my phone, and I could ring people and create, trying to create a network. I can find their number online, I can ring them, and that's what puts us ahead, I think, of a lot of other parts of the world.
I can see that. Obviously, having the ability to connect with people and to sell your message using social media, etc., is very, very powerful, and it can give businesses and whatever projects you're running great lift off. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're adding value to the world. I mean, I'm sure you are, Joe, with your business. Don't get me wrong, but let's be honest. There are millions of businesses which are selling stuff people don't need, services or goods. You know, and yet, if you think about it, there are people in parts of the world, in quite remote parts of the world, who are doing great things for their community or for their country, and they haven't had the benefit of being able to use social media, but they've used word of mouth to engage people. Yeah. They've gone out and demonstrated things. I'm thinking of people like the Kenyan woman Wangari. I can never pronounce her name. Maathai, who planted trees and got farmers to recognise the importance of planting trees to stop soil being blown away, and then communities joined in, and it was all done by word of mouth. It was a true community effort from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And some of these people didn't need huge investment from global corporations. They didn't need social media to get people on board to support what they do.
Yeah.
So I think we can each do great things without social media, but I can recognise, and I've seen it because I've got a 12-year-old daughter. They go, Dad, I need a phone. Why do you need a phone? Everyone else has got one.
Yeah.
And we get sucked into this, don't we? And I think the sad thing is that maybe our mobile phones have become so powerful, what they have the capacity to do, that they feel like essential tools for modern living.
Well, this is it. For me, it seems like one of the tools that is so accessible in this part of the world that's actually widening that gap between the richer half and the poorer half of the world.
Yeah.
Which is why I think the argument is that it could be considered a human right.
Yeah, I suppose there's this whole idea that knowledge is power, but I just throw this into the mix. News travels really, really quickly now. That could mean that we're better informed, but I suspect that we're not actually, because it's not necessarily the case, because with our insatiable desire to get information quickly, there are bad people in the world who've exploited that, and this has led to the generation of fake news. And you can see how quickly a story goes around the world, whether or not it's true, misleads people, creates political instability, social instability.
Yeah.
And we've got to be careful with to be aware of that as well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I just would like to speak about social policy. I was at a Global Goals event earlier in the year, and they were talking about equality in the world, and how do we get equality in today's society? How do we get to the ultimate goal that I agree, I would say the majority of us want, is for everybody to be living on an equal level, or just to be treated as equal. Everybody to be treated as equal. Their answer, when asked, it was a panel discussion, that when the question was asked to the panellists, how do we reach it? Their response was social policy implemented by governments. What do you think about that?
Obviously, sometimes we need to legislate to perhaps restrict the excesses that some people take home excessive amounts of pay. Maybe one solution there is a fairer taxation system to make sure they're putting money back into the system, which helps give uplift to people at the bottom. We also have to give people at the bottom, I hate that expression, by the way, better access to education, quality education. There's no reason why one person should get a better quality education than another simply because of their postcode. We need to make sure everybody has access to free healthcare at the point of delivery. And we are in this country, let's face it, we're very lucky because we have the National Health Service, but elsewhere around the world, they don't have that structure. And in fact, people have to pay for their healthcare, which further disadvantages people who are poor. We need to, as global citizens, I would suggest we need to be paying a proper price for goods that we buy from countries far, far away where the workers are working in terrible conditions, often without breaks, without adequate support by their businesses, exposed to dangerous chemicals in the production of whatever it is they're making, and they're not paid enough to lift their families out of poverty. Sometimes, you need to have legislation to make that happen, or you need to have customers starting to nudge businesses in the right direction to do the right thing to help their employees come up. But obviously, one of the things that worries me is that we've got this great inequality in the world at the moment, and it could be made even worse as a result of two things: climate change, and believe it or not, the loss of biodiversity, the loss of plant and animal species around the world. Right. Those things can create even greater poverty, because in many cases, people who've grown up, let's take examples of hard to reach tribes that might live in the Amazon or in parts of the Congo Basin. Some of those people have lived in harmony with nature for centuries, and now, as they've been discovered, their way of life is being disrupted because we're taking goods, say in the form of timber from the forest that they live in. We're introducing diseases that they've not been exposed to before, affecting their quality of life even more negatively. And those people had a quality of life and had values that we should respect, or should have respected. And if they lose the biodiversity on which they depend, the plants and animals on which they depend for their everyday life, we could see some of those tribal peoples being wiped out by the 21st century world. Climate change has the potential to do its worst to those communities that are poorest. I mean, climate change is going to have an impact on the UK. It's certainly going to have an impact on the US, which is ironic given their president's position on climate change. But when you look at poorer countries in the world, climate change has the potential to do huge damage. I mean, in 2015, there was a heat wave in Pakistan which led to the deaths of thousands of people.
Wow.
And in April 2018, the hottest temperature ever recorded in an April month was registered in southeast Pakistan. Now, sooner or later, as temperatures rise, it's going to become impossible for people to work outdoors. One of the other things that's going to happen, we're going to see increased pests and disease affecting crops. And in an agricultural country like Pakistan, that's going to be a very serious impact. And we're going to see melting of ice sheets in the Himalayas, which means that we're going to lose water supply to those communities. So they're going to suffer disproportionately.
Sure. Okay, well, we're coming up towards the end of the show now. I want to thank you, Richard, for joining me on the show today. It's been very interesting, and I hope you'll come back and join us soon. I do just want to mention, as part of my organisation, thepeopleproject.org.uk, we're running a competition online for a free Together Band wristband, which supports sustainable development work and global goals and all things sustainability and all things for a better world, to be honest. To enter the competition, you just have to head to our Instagram, peopleproj2030, hit follow, like the giveaway post, tag a friend, use the hashtag #TogetherBand. Thank you very much. Join us next week.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Zohar Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar.